device, what is the redundancy for that? Right, so then we have to coordinate with the data centers to take a approval. We have to check that what is the power supply they are providing to us. Then we need to be also take care of redundancy perspective. So, but in that cloud computing, whenever we have to deploy or launch any service, right, we do not need to follow all these process, which were very time consuming. What we need, we just need to log into the management console. On the management console, select the service. Like if you want to launch a server, if you want to launch any DNS server, DHCP server, or any website, right, you do not need to be worried about that hardware. You do not need to be worried about that rack space or a network connectivity, or a power connectivity, or a load balancing sites, or for a DRs, right? So this is saying that this is very convenient. You do not need to follow the approval process. You do not need to be coordinate with the data centers operations team to check all these. Then they will take their 2 weeks or 3 weeks of SLA to fulfill your requirement. And as I said, that this is on demand access, right? So whatever you want, this is as per your client demand. You just log into your management console and launch the services. And next is from anywhere to a shared pool of computing resources. So this is again a global services. So here in cloud we have a regions, right? So from that region we will launch our service, and that service will be accessible globally. So this is, you have to decide that on which region you have to launch that services. We will explain in detail that what is region and what is availability zones. So first of all, we understand what is cloud computing. So cloud computing is a model for allowing convenient on-demand access from anywhere to that shared pool of computing resources. So when I'm saying that shared pool of computing resources, this is the definition of public clouds, right? So we will also cover what is public cloud, private cloud. So this is saying that that shared pool. So if you have a hardware, right, so that in that hardware there will be a multiple tenants. Some of the services might be hosted for that IBM, some of the services might be hosted for Accenture, and some of the services might be hosted for a Google, right? So if this is a Google platform, GCP, if this is a AWS, or there might be a possibility that this will be for HCL, right? So this will be a tenancy based model, right? So this is called a cloud computing. So now there are currently three top cloud service providers in the market, right? So as per this diagram, you can see that AWS is currently leading the cloud market, and on number 2 we have Azure, who is competing to that AWS, and the third one is Google Cloud. Apart from that, there are some other third-party cloud providers like Alibaba, IBM, Salesforce, Oracle's, Decent Cloud, and now most of the organizations are also launching. But in market currently, we have 3 cloud service providers, right? So if you want to improve your skills in terms of cloud to get a better exposures in the market, so these are the 3 cloud service providers for which you need to learn their technologies and get the experience on that, right? So this is the Gartner report. So as per this Gartner report, I hope you all know about that Gartner. So they are providing the reports for all the technologies and who are leading to that technologies, right? So Amazon is currently on the top, right? So in that leading market, so again, Microsoft and Google are competing with them, but right now AWS is capturing most of the market. So when I'm saying that AWS history, right, so it is not that service which is launched just a few years back. So they have launched their services in 2002, right? So initially they launched that cloud platform for their own services, right? And they launched for SQS services, for SNS services. First service which they published for all publicly for multiple clients or for all the organization was SQS services. After that, the SQS NSS services in the 2006 they launched EC2 instances for publicly. So after that, they were keep going for that VPCs, customer events, CIA, right, security. So as of now, they have hundreds of services which are publicly available for all the organizations, right? So as you see that, right? So that cloud services were launched in 2002, but from a market perspective, if I will say is that in 2012 they start capturing the markets of the all the big organizations, right? And as per my experience, I see that from last 2017 or 18, most of the organizations start migrating their environment from cloud to the on-prem environment. And this is a WTS Solutions report that as per markets reports, right, by end of 2025, 80% of organizations environment infrastructure will migrate to cloud, right? So now we are in 2023, because I worked with a lot of banks and other organizations from a consultancy's perspective, right? So as of now, by 2023, I will say is that many big organizations has been already migrated 50 to 60% of their infrastructure to the cloud, and rest those who have just started, they are also targeting by the end of 2025 the 80. I still think that they said 80, but I'm expecting that it will be around 85 to 90% of your services or your infrastructure will be migrated to the cloud. So the only thing which will remain in the on-prem environment is to just to VPNs or your internet services, through that users can connect from your offices to the cloud environment, right? So if you have understanding of the cloud technologies, how the services are deployed, how things are managed on the cloud, how we can perform the networking, how we can manage the security on the cloud, or how we can create as designs or review that designs, then only we can survive. Because after 2025, because now I will not say that this cloud is a present, right? Cloud is a future. So because now you see that already 50 to 60% of the big organization infrastructure is moved to the cloud. So if you have to work with them, and if you are looking for any job opportunities, right, then you should know the cloud. So now I will say that cloud is a present, right? So if you don't know about cloud, then you are only working on the past technologies, right? And that past technology will not help you along, right? So if you want to survive in this IT industry, you should know what is cloud, how that cloud works, what are the services on that. This is the present, because now you already know that we now are moving towards artificial intelligence, machine learning, right? So where these artificial intelligence and machine learning is used, where we are deploying that AIs and the machine learning features. So these all are already deployed in the clouds, right? So if your organization is also planning to automate services through AI or through machine learning, right, then you have to be first know that how we can build that platforms on the cloud, then only we can manage. So this is the current market uh, demand, right, for that cloud engineer. So you see that for, as I said, that currently AWS is leading the market, right? So in AWS currently we have a 44% of openings for that cloud engineers, but as of now only 13% cloud engineers are available in the market. So you see that how much gap we have, right? Similarly for Azure, they are the second competitor in the cloud service provider, who are capturing that 24% of their market requirement. And but currently there are only 6% of Microsoft Azure engineers. Similar graph is for that automation and for DevOps, right? So if you want to survive in this IT industry for next 5 to 6 years, right, then you should have this knowledge. So there is a big gap, right, currently. So if you will learn this AWS or Azure or DevOps or Google, right, so you will not get any difficulties to find a job, because currently in, if you will see in the naukri.com or in the linkedin.com, right, they have a huge opening, but we do not have currently the engineers in the market, right? So this is why we will say is that this is the very demanding course. So this is the cloud certification options. So as I already said that this is the first exam, right? Cloud practitioner. So cloud practitioner is a very basic understanding of cloud. What is cloud models, categories, what is DHCP services, DNS services. So mostly this certification is prepared by the students or from BTech, MCS, right? Those don't currently do not have any experience. So this is the first associate exam, right? If you have a two plus years of experience, then you can directly enroll for that solution architect associate. So in this course, we will help you to prepare for this one, solution architect associate. So once you will have the understanding about all the platform or the services of the AWS, like what is IAM, what is EC2, how we are managing load balancing, what is storage services, what is databases, how we are managing the DNS services, Lambda services, automation services. Then after covering that basic understanding, we will move to that security stuff, right? So in that AWS security, we will teach you that what are the security parameter or what are the security services which cloud service provider is providing to us. Apart from that, if like we are using our on-prem environment, right? So in on-prem environment, what are the services which we can migrate to the cloud? What process needs to be follow? How we can deploy? We will do that, all the practicals. Apart from that, some of the basic terminologies about that networking, how we can connect to different VPCs, or how we can peer that VPCs, what is transit gateway, how we can attach that two transit gateways with attachment IDs or routing or a propagations. That things we will also cover in this course, right? So after this, as I said, that once you have a good mastery on that, and now if you want to move to that architecture role, then we can also plan for a new course for that AWS associate, right? And those who are from a coding background, right? They can after practitioner, they can go for a developer course or for an operations course, and then the next level of this is a DevOps engineering professional, right? So this is their certification architecture, and these are the exams code, right? So and as I said, that those who are from a managerial roles, right? Those who wants to lead the team or who wants to project lead the projects for the migrations or designs, or those who are from infosec team, those who reviewing that designs in terms of risk management or from a gap analysis, or some if any application is going to be migrated to the cloud. So what things we need to be cross verify in terms of threat modeling, risk assessments, gap analysis, in terms of designing, in terms of connectivities, right? So all these things, and in terms of compliances, in terms of regulations, right? All things will be covered under this CCSP, right? So anyone who will be interested for this CCSP exams after preparation, they can reach to us, because we are also providing that CCSP certification training, because I am also CCSP certified. So this was the approach how we can go for the certification processes, right? And now let's first talk about that. We know now what is cloud, right? So why actually we have to move to the cloud, right? So as I already said in the definition, the first thing is it is very simple and quick setup, right? So we do not need to be coordinate with the data center operations teams to take their approvals that we want to deploy a new physical hardware server. So we need your approval for a rack space, for a power, or for a network ports availability, for a public IPs, right? So you do not need to coordinate with anyone, right? So whatever service you want more public IPs, you want more interfaces, right? So you can go to console and you can launch. You want a redundancy, you can replicate your services from one region to another region, right? So whatever you want, everything is in your hand. right? Now, what the best part is, small monthly fees, pay as you go, right? So this is what is attracting to all the organizations, right? So in the cloud, you have to be pay for what you are using. Like if your office is from Monday to Friday, right, and Saturday Sunday you are not giving any services to the clients, right? So on Saturday Sunday, if your servers are in shutdown state, right, so you do not need to pay. Or if your services are in stop state, if you are not launching any services, right, so you do not need to pay for these 2 days. So you have to pay for only what you are using. But like in on-prem environment, right, Saturday Sunday, whether your offices are closed, but if your servers are in their data centers, they will charge you for that complete 30 days. Uh, but in the cloud, if let's suppose you have a Lambda service, right, so if that Lambda service function is that whenever they see any alert, so based on that alert, this action will be triggered. Like this will generate a whip, this or this will shut your services, or this will restart your services. So the number of times this action will be triggered, the only you have to pay for that number of triggers, right? So if in the 1 month that only 100 triggers are generated, right, then you have to pay for only 100 triggers. You do not need to be pay for that service for that complete 30 days, right? So this is the another feature, that a small monthly fees, pay as you grow, right? And the third option in the cloud is scale as you grow, right? So you do not need to be very like initially when you set up your business, at that time your server was handling traffic of 100 users. In the next 6 months, your business is grown, right, from 100 to 10,000 users, right, 10,000 users. Then you do not need to be purchase a new hardware, right? Like in on-prem, initially you purchased this hardware and now you see that your or let's suppose you have launched any website or web services, and now you see then in within 2 months your traffic is increased from 1,000 hits to 10,000 hits in within 1 month, and your processor or memory is not capable of that. Then you have to purchase a new processor or a new memory, or sometimes you have to purchase a new hardware. Then you have to spend a lot on that, right? But in this cloud environment, in that same setup, you can increase multiple CPUs, you can increase multiple RAMs, multiple GPU processors, graphic processors. You can increase that existing interface limit from 1 gig to 10 gig, right? So anything in the existing environment you can scale, right? So if you want to add any additional servers, you can add to that existing setup. That we will learn in the scalability and the elasticity options. And the next part is we are sharing the security responsibilities with the cloud service provider. Like if your organization is a financed organization, right, so they are conducting the internal audits for PCI DSS compliances, or they are managing ISO 27001 compliances, right? So here once you will deploy your organization's infrastructure in the cloud, the securities will be shared responsibility. You can coordinate with the cloud service provider and you can ask them, okay, so we are financial organization, so we are conducting PCI audits every yearly, right? So we want all the PCI DSS compliances for our environment, right? So this will be a cloud security team, that cloud service provider security team's responsibility to manage that compliances, right? So they will give you that reports, they will conduct that internal audits, right? So you can ask anytime for the last 6 months of their audit reports, right? Even before deploying, you can ask for that SOC 2 reports. These are some compliance reports, SOC 1 reports, SOC 2 reports, SOC 3 reports, right? So you can directly ask them. Yeah, we will cover that in that cloud categories section, right? And then it is rehab benefit, quickly shorter lead time for the value. As if you have to deploy anything, it will not take too much time in terms of approvals or in terms of processes, right? So this thing we have already covered. Like why organizations are moving from on-prem to cloud, because they are actually moving from a capex to opex model, right? So what is capex model? So here you have to purchase a hardware. Here you have to invest the amount for your services capacity management, in terms of like you have to purchase a hardware, you have to and after 2 years or 3 years, right now you see that y- your services are increasing, the load is increasing, then you have to spend more money again for a new hardware. And it is not like that if you have purchased one hardware that will fulfill your environment. Then in terms of security, you have to purchase similar one more hardware with that same configuration to manage the availability, right? So for one service you have to purchase two servers. But here in the cloud, right, so you do not need to be worried about that hardware, so you will only need to be worried about that opex model. So in the opex model you have to be pay for their operation stuff, right? So whatever the services operation running on that cloud, you have to pay for that. Apart from that, you only need the amount for that cloud engineers who are higher, but you do not need to be manage the cost for the hardware, right? So this is what now there is no capex, because in the cloud we are moving from capex to opex model. And again, this is easy to use, that we will show you in that demo session, that how cloud console is working. And then easy and less expensive to maintain, right? So it all depends upon what type of cloud category we are using. So if we are on the PaaS or a SaaS solutions, we do not need to worry about that patchings of operating systems. We do not need to be worried about that hardware maintenance, data backups, disaster recovery, business continuity. These all things will be managed by a cloud service provider, right? So these all things we will discuss. So okay, so now what things we will cover in our course, right? So in our course, we will cover what is IAM services, identity and access management. In that, what are users, what are roles, what are groups, what are the policies, types of policies. Then we will cover that. If we have to create, in our organizations, we have three offices. One is in Mumbai, one is in Gurgaon, and one is in Bengaluru, right? So similarly, if we have to set up a three sites, so how we can create that virtual private cloud networks, how we can design that networks in terms of backup strategies, in terms of storage of file servers, raw storage, object storage, block storages, EBS volumes, right? So every type of storages and how we managing that storages, what should be the rotation policies, life cycles of data security, right? That we will cover in that. Then what are the compute services, how we can deploy the services, how we can launch the services on that servers, how we can publish that services to the public environment if we need a public IPs with that elastic IPs. Then similarly, we will also cover that load balancing stuffs, how many types of load balancing, how we can manage the load balancing through service providers load balancer, then DNS services, their records, A records, MX records, NX records, AAA records. So every types of record. And if we have to perform the load balancing or the routing through that DNS services, that we will also cover. Then we will cover what are the software as a services and what services currently that service providers are providing. Then we will cover database securities, right? How many types of relational databases and non-relational databases we have in that cloud, what is the difference between them, and how we can launch platform based databases and the infrastructure based databases, and how we can manage their security and the services. Then we will cover network security services, and what are the cloud provider monitoring tool, or if we have our on-prem monitoring services or the tools, and how we can integrate that with the cloud. Then we will also cover in this course that how we can manage the billing reports, we can manage the notification alarm services, how we can design new services in the clouds, right? How we because in the cloud it is not like that the company will provide you this product, okay, so this is a Palo Alto, this is a Checkpoint, or this is a Windows server, right? You have to decide that for this requirement what service I need to launch. Like in that, if I will take example of load balancer, right? So we have a network load balancer, we have a classic load balancer, we have an application load balancer, we have a gateway load balancer. So for which requirement, which load balancer you have to launch, right? So similarly in that DNS services, we have a 5 types of DNS services. So on which requirement, which service we have to launch, that we will cover in all the scenarios, right? So we will share our industry experience, we will share our designs, right? So based on the design, why this design used that service, so we will cover everything. Then we will tell you that how that migrations of services works, what things needs to be covered, what are that R6 migration designs, right? How we can manage that interoperability, portability, how we can check the vendor lock-ins, vendor lockouts, as how we can review that SLAs. Then we will also go through that life cycle management, right? In terms of regulatory and compliances, we will cover that static routings of the network connectivity. Then we will cover cloud formations, content delivery networks, how we can connect AWS with Azure or GCP, or if you want to connect your cloud with your on-prem environment, what are their transit gateways, how we can design the architect, right? So these things we will cover in that. Apart from that, in that security side, right? So in security side, we will cover the data protection, right? So if that data is stored in the servers, if data is stored in the storages, or how we can protect that, what is the data life cycles in terms of creation to store to use to backup to archive. So how we can protect that, right? So what are the classification categories, how we can manage. Then what are the cloud infrastructure as a service categories, platform as a service, and software as a service securities, right? So we will cover the security of all 3 categories. So what type of security needs to be implemented, and if let's suppose any security incident happens, right? Or if any of your service is compromised, right? Then what should be your response management, how you can tackle that breach. Then again, from a security perspective, what is identity and access management, what is key management systems, what is hardware security modules to managing your public and private keys, right? Then we will also cover that layer 3 to layer 7 securities, what are the security products we are using for network level securities, for a layer 7 application WAF securities, what are all, we will cover all the currently inbuilt AWS security tools available in the AWS console. We will cover all these. Then if let's suppose we are currently using our server and we want to migrate server as it is, or if we have a current SQL database, we want to migrate that database as it is to the cloud environment, or if we have a F5 load balancer, or if we have a checkpoint Palo Alto, right? So if we have to migrate, so how we can migrate, how we can deploy, how we can launch that, right? Again, plannings, right? So because currently your organization is using your public IP, right? If you will move to the cloud, right, then AWS will provide you your public IP. So how we can use our own public IPs, how we can use elastic IP addresses, all these. Then if we have existing setups, then how we can perform that risk assessments or the gap analysis of that cloud architect. And again, if in terms of security, what are the security parameters we can implement in terms of DNS as well as in terms of load balancing. So under this preparation, right, so we will cover all the exams topic, that what type of exam questions comes, like some 2 marks of questions with the definitions, and what are that scenario questions. And we will also help you to prepare for that interview questions, that in that interview how they will ask that, how you can explain that, okay, in our organization this is our design, this. So we will tell you that how you can explain or you can review that existing designs, right? And how you can prepare for that interview. We will also share our experience. Apart from that, we will also provide you that online portals for that revisions and lab practice, because SIANET is also managing their labs and their sessions, video channels, and the YouTube channels and their paid videos for all this preparation, right? So let me show you. So this is that complete content of this course, right? So in this course, we will cover so from introduction of cloud computing, their models, their public private cloud models, what is AWS history, right? AWS certifications, how we can enable that multi-factor authentication. If I don't want to use RSA or any third-party tool, how we can perform a multi-factor authentication, right? What is IAM keys? What is AWS organizations, AWS resources, availability zones, regions, right? And in terms of security incident responses, how we can enable the guard duty. What is the role of trusted IPs? What action needs to be when services compromised? What is AWS inspector, security hub, WAF, cloud provider config, AWS messy flow. Apart from that, in terms of network security, these are tools which we will cover in this course in AWS Shield, identity management, federation, SAM, single sign-on, Cognito for that your mobile applications connectivity in terms of security. Then in data protections, we will use HSM, KMS, certificate managers, right? And then how we can connect if we have a multiple VPCs, how we can connect that VPCs each other. If we want to connect our cloud services with the cloud provider, how we can manage this, right? Our public DHCP services, DNS services. So this public networking in terms of gateways, right? How we can connect NAT gateways, how we can connect internet gateways, how we can use any instance for a NAT, how we can perform a port forwarding. Then this is how we can launch that endpoints, why we need endpoints, right? Then what is EC2, how we can, that EC2 is elastic cloud computing, about Windows, Linux, right? How we can launch Cisco devices, Palo devices in the cloud. Then EBS elastic block storages, these everything we will cover in this sections, right? And then we will cover storage, file systems, what type of storages we have, right? So if we want to replicate that storages in the different regions, or if we want to store these for a long terms from a backup policies, or which type of storage we have to use, what tiers we have to use, and how we can manage the pricing for that storages, right? How we can clean up that storages. And then these are the network stuffs which we will cover in terms of networking adapters, types of VPC pairings, how we can build a IPsec VPN tunnel, right? Or how we can propagate that BGP routing in between our VPC peers, or how we can directly connect to the Palo Alto, right? So these are all network stuffs. Then this will be the load balancing stuffs that we will cover. And this will be the Route 53. Route 53 is basically called by DNS services in the AWS as a Route 53, right? So what types of record, how we can uh, launch a public hosted zones, private hosted zones, how we can create alias for a DNS, what is multi-value routing, weight routing, latency routing. So these all routings are in that DNS level, right? Then for our endpoint edge location of web services, we will cover that content delivery network to provide optimization and the performance. And then this will be your, okay, so then we will cover this direct connectivity, right? Then this will be a IAM, identity and access management roles, what type of policies we can create, how we can connect our internal Active Directory domain controller with that cloud IAM services, so that users with my internal domain controller can authenticate. Then we will cover all types of logging and monitoring services like CloudWatch, CloudTrail, how we can generate that logs from that, how we can create reports, how we can use that simple notification services, right? Then layer 7 firewalls, AWS system manager for patching, that security hubs, what are the other security technologies they are providing, then again the data protection. So this all content we will cover in this course. So this will start from very basics, what is cloud, what are the cloud services, how, right? So once we will cover that, then we will go to that security and the basic networkings, right? Okay guys, just give me a 5 to 10 seconds of break. Okay, So as I said that, right? So these are the 5 basic cloud characteristics of any cloud, right? Whether it will be a AWS cloud, Azure cloud, GCP cloud, or Oracle, IBM, anyone who is building that cloud, right? The first benefit of moving to that cloud is on-demand self-service, right? So as I said that we just need to log into that management console. I will show you after that PPT that what is the management console, how we can create um, account for that, and then how we can log in on that, right? Then second thing was that resource pooling, right? So if your current hardware or a server is providing that services, and now you are seeing that the utilization is increased or your number of users are increased, so in that same setup you can create multiple servers, right, in terms of resource pooling. So the broad network access, your services will be accessible from anywhere in the world, right? So you can either connect through HTTPS, through over the internet. You can create a direct connectivity that will be like a lease line connectivity between your on-prem to the cloud, or you can create a VPNs, right? Or if let's suppose both are not working and somebody is trying to access from home, right? So you can allow that communication over the internet. So there is no challenge, right? So if let's suppose one of your region of India goes down, right, then you can access that same services to that nearest region, that will be a Singapore, right, or in China or in Australia. We will explain you that. Then again, the next feature is rapid elasticity, right? So we, if we will launch our services with that rapid elasticity feature, right? So let's suppose currently I will take example of Amazon's website, right? So generally they are seeing on 20 million hits per day for their website, right? But for their festival season, suddenly they sees that for these 2 or 3 specific days, that hit count will be increased from 20 million to 80 million, right? So in that 20 million to 80 million for that 2 or 3 days, whenever they will see that the number of hits are increasing, right? So the automatically more memory will be add, automatically more CPUs will be add, automatically more storage will be add to that server in terms of elasticity. So that elasticity will be automatically increase all the resources on the service based on that demand or based on that client's request, right? And as soon once the demand is decreased, they will also roll back that RAM, or they will also roll back their processes, they will also roll back CPUs and their storage volume, right? So that will be auto grow and auto shrink services. So you do not need to be upgrade server manually, right? You do not need to be worry about that in future. In let's suppose in these specific 2 days, if suddenly the hits will increase, that how my services will manage that, right? So we will also tell you that how we can enable that features for all the services, right? How, what needs to be configured on that. So, and the best part is that for that specific time, right? So in that one day, for let's suppose 8 hours, I see that a lot of traffic for that 8 hours. If that cloud service provider increased my memory, then I have to pay for that only 8 hours, not for that complete one day, for a 24 hours. So this is what we said, that this is a metered service, right? So it will cap. So if let's suppose your server is run, you launched a server and you used that server for 30 minutes, right? Then you have to pay for only 30 minutes, not like you have to pay for at least 1 hour. Even if you will shut down your server after launching, you run one query, after getting that output, you terminate that machine, so you have to pay for only 5 minutes, right? So this is the best feature, that you have to pay for that service and time duration until you use that, right? So this is, these are the 5 basic cloud characteristics. On demand self-service, whatever we want to launch, we can launch manually. We do not need to coordinate with the cloud service providers for approvals. resource poolings in that existing environment, number of servers we want to add, number of firewalls, number of things we want to add in the existing environment. There is no set of restrictions that, okay, this is your VPC, so you can only launch 3 servers, or in that availability zone, you can only launch 10 servers, right? So you can add number of resource poolings in multiple availability zones. Broad network access, you can access it from anywhere, right? We have a multiple methods of connecting to that our AWS cloud, but we can access it from anywhere. And then we have already discussed that rapid elasticity. So rapid elasticity is auto grow and auto shrink feature and mirrored services, right? So you have to pay which you are using. Okay, so this is a very important section in terms of basic understanding, right? So because even if you have number of experience, right, but before launching, before designing, right, you have to consider this category, right? So let's discuss this, right? So in any application design or in any environment, right, so these are set of services. Like in, if I'm taking example of my on-prem office or my on-prem private data center, right, so there I'm managing the networking stuff in terms of switching, right? Their switching power, their switching load balancing, their availability, redundancy. Then I'm taking care of storages, right? SAN, NAS, or if I'm managing the inbuilt hard drives of the servers, then I'm taking care by raids, right? I'm launching that raid 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever I'm launching, right? Then I have to also take care of the security of my data, right? If data should not be corrupted, it should not be infected with the ransomware or virus, right? Then if I am managing that servers, right, then I have to spend amount of as a capex model for that. I have to take care of their processes, I have to take care of their memories, I have to take care of that power connectivity. If I'm launching virtualization on that physical hardware, then I have to take care of ESXi, right, management. I have to ESXi, that is a virtualized management tool, which is creating that guest machines for us or hosts for us, right? So I have to take care of all the patching. I have to take care of their updates, everything. And I have to take care of operating systems. I have to take care of that application and then their application runtime and their data and the application itself. So everything we are managed in the cloud. So if let's suppose I have to migrate this service to the cloud, right? So these are the 3 cloud categories, right? So if I have to migrate this services from on-prem to the cloud, right? So I have to decide that on which cloud category I will migrate, whether I will choose IaaS, the short form of this infrastructure as a service is IaaS. Similarly, PaaS, platform as a service, or a software as a service, right? So management will tell you that, okay, you have to migrate, right? So this will be your decision based on the business requirement. So if I will pick infrastructure as a service, right? So in that infrastructure as a service, these red parts will be managed by a cloud service provider. They will take care of their routing, switchings, they will take care of network connectivities, right? They will take care of the storage, they will take care of the servers, they will take care of virtualizations. So in that IaaS as a service, you just connect to that management console, you just launch, I need one machine. So on that hardware, right, they have a virtualization management tool. So from that, they will create one virtual machine for you. On that virtual machine, you have to take care of the patching of that OS, you have to take care of the licensing part, and then you can install whatever the applications you want to run, and then you have to take care of that data security, right? If how you will take that backups, right? How you will protect that data from the virus, and what are the security settings or the application settings you have to configure. So all these things will be covered in this infrastructure as a service. So like in this, you see that this part will be managed by a cloud service provider, and this part will be managed by your organization, right? So that is the reason infrastructure as a service is cheaper, right? So you have to pay less amount. But if you will go for a platform as a service, in platform as a service, cloud provider will take care of network, cloud provider will take care of storage, they will take care of servers, they will take care of virtualizations. Here the major difference is that they will take care of operating system. You do not need to install the operating system, you do not need to be take care of the patching, you do not need to be worry about that licensing part, right? And you just need to provide that, okay, this is my Python code, or this is my Java code, I want to run this, or this is my .NET code, right? So they will ensure that on which platform, whether they will pick Windows or a Linux, right? We do not need to be worried about that. And for to launch that code, right, what backend platform they have to manage, they will automatically launch Apache, Tomcat, or whatever the service, right? So they will take care of your application services. So the only thing you need to be worried about is that you have to take care about the data. If let's suppose this is a web service you launched, right? So if somebody is uploading that data to your web service, right, the backend server, you have to take care about that data backups, where you will store that backup, what will be the data backup policy, how I will save that data in terms of viruses or for a network attacks, and the application security, right? So in that platform as a service, you have to be manage only these two things. Rest everything will be managed by a cloud service provider. So if you will go with that, where you do not need to spend on the OS or the patching, right, or the licensing part, then you have to pay little more, right? So that is why platform as a service is costlier than infrastructure as a service. But if you don't want to manage anything and you want to give all the responsibility to the cloud service provider, that I don't want to manage from network, storage, server, virtualization, operating system, middleware, runtime, and even I don't want to take care of data or application, right? If let's suppose if I will take example of this, so this Office 365 services, right, or a Gmail services, or I will say Dropbox, right? So there, like in Gmail, I do not need to be worried about that this their mailing server is deployed on which operating system, right? So how they are managing the redundancy and the uptime of Gmail. So whatever the data I have stored in my emails, in the draft emails, or in my Google Drive, this is their responsibility, that it should be always available for me whenever I want to access, and it should be always secure. It should not be corrupted by any ransomware or by any virus, right? And the all the Gmail securities, right, how this application can be better optimized, everything will be managed by this SaaS service, right? So if I will go for that SaaS service, then I have to pay more amount. So SaaS service is always costliest service by the cloud service providers. So this is the decision you have to be decided based on your organization requirements, right? Like if you have any currently exchange services, right, so and you want to migrate that exchange services to the cloud, right? So if you will go with their Office 365, and if you have purchased that license for next 2 years, right, then that money will be wasted, right? So in that scenario, you have to go for infrastructure as a service, right? So these are all things, right? These all things we will cover in every scenario, right? But you should know the basic understanding that what is infrastructure as a service, one is platform as a service, and what is software as a service, and what are the responsibilities. And so that is why we were saying that in that cloud environment we have a shared responsibility model, right? So some things will be managed by a cloud customer, and some things will be managed by or responsible by a cloud service providers, right? So these are that cloud categories. So the now next thing, what is a cloud models, right? So what is cloud models, right? So okay, so we have one public cloud, right? So when I'm saying that public cloud, so here they are providing this platform to globally all the customers or enterprise organizations, right? So if this is their server, if HCL wants to launch their website, they will give you that same hardware with that tenancy ID. Similarly, Adobe, if they want to launch, if they want Google want to launch, right? So that single hardware platform will give you that separate virtualization environment for all the service providers, right? But they should not uh, connect to other party organizations data. That will be responsibility of cloud service provider. But that single hardware, like if I will take example of Office 365, right? So this Office 365 has a one single server where they have deployed their Office 365 application, and now multiple organizations are creating account on that. Like Accenture has created one account, Halion created account, GSK, Cognizant, right? So everyone is accessing that same server to access their services and their drive data, Office 365 drive data or SharePoint services, but they all are deployed on that same server, right? So this is called a public cloud, right? On which they are providing that platform globally to all the users or all the enterprises. Even like a single user can create one account on that, and they can launch their own VMs on that shared hardware, and they can perform their testings or the R&Ds, right? And this is called a private cloud. What is called private cloud? So in that private cloud, a dedicated organization is managing their own infrastructure, right? So this is like a legacy data center, like Google, right? So this is a, if I will take example of Google, so they have created their own hardware, their servers, their application load balancers, and only Google can access that, right? So if Google can only access that, no other endpoint user or a public user can create account, or no any other organization can access that services. That will be called as a private cloud. So how, then why this private cloud logic comes, right? So all the government sector are mostly creating their own private clouds, right? So Indian government has their own private cloud. So US government, UK government, every government has its own private cloud, and that cloud is accessible only for their services and or for their users. Like if I will take example in India, for like this is a data center which is managed by Airtel, right? So Airtel is providing services to HCL, to IBM, to Accenture, to Wipro, right? So then this cloud will be a public cloud. But if let's suppose Airtel has its own data center, but they are not providing that services to any third party companies or organizations or users, they are providing that services for their internal users, for their internal infrastructure, then it will be a private cloud, right? And then next model is a community cloud. So what is a community cloud, right? So community cloud is a cloud which is a combined service managed by two or three organizations, right? So when let's suppose this is my data center, right? And this set data center is managed by these two organizations, right? Both are let's suppose let's take an example of gaming platforms, right? So one organization is managing their graphic parts and that designing part, and one organization is managing their developing code, right? Or the security code, right? So only these two organizations can access the resources of that data center, right? Only their employees. If any third party wants to access that data center or a services, they were not allowed, right? So when the combination of two or three or five organizations who spend money to build one data center, and then only that organization's users can access that services, or that data center security is shared between only these organizations, that is called a community cloud, right? So we know what is public cloud, that cloud which is accessible for globally all over the internet for all the users, all the organizations of private cloud. That cloud or a data center that is dedicatedly accessible for that specific organization. So community cloud, when we have a combined set of two or more organizations which are creating their data centers, managing that data security, right, or launching their organizations, or that only can use that resources, will be called a community cloud. And then the last model is hybrid cloud, right? So mostly in our experience or in scenarios, right? So either organizations go with the public cloud or with the hybrid cloud. So what is hybrid cloud? So hybrid cloud is the combination of cloud plus your on-prem environment. This is one example of hybrid cloud. Or the second example is when one cloud, like this is AWS cloud and this is Azure cloud, right? So when one service is using two environments, that is called a hybrid cloud. So sometimes people says that this section called a multi-cloud and this called a hybrid cloud. But in general, hybrid cloud is when you are using services from two different environments. So let's take an example of this. So like this is your website, or this is your company website portal, right? To fill your timesheets, right? So when you log in, when you access through HTTPS, right, you get a login page, right? You put username and password. That username and password is your domain controller password or your AD password, and that domain controller is hosted in your on-prem data center, right? So that data center domain controller you have not hosted in the cloud. So when request hits to this, you put username and password. Through SAML, they send a request to your IDP domain controller. They authenticated that, okay, this is a valid user. They will provide that SAML token to user, and then you will authenticate, right? So in this, you were using services on the cloud as well as on your on-prem environment. Similarly, if you are providing any services to your clients, and that your services are connected with that database, that database is hosted in the on-prem. So one service, when it is using two different environments to provide that delivery of that service, that comes under a hybrid cloud model. Similarly, now most of the organizations are using Azure Office 365 or Azure Active Directory, right, for authentications. Then if some of the services are hosted in my AWS, I am trying to develop any code on as a DevOps on my server. When I have to log into that server, it will ask me a username and password. Once I will put a username and password, it will go to through the trust relationship to that Azure Active Directory. It will authenticate, and once it will be authenticated, then only it will allow me to log in, right? So again, for that authentication perspective, from a database perspective, when some of services are hosted in one cloud service provider and other services hosted on other cloud service provider or your on-prem environment, that will be called a hybrid cloud. Okay. So, okay. So I think we multiple times says that some of the services are in different region and some are on the different regions, right? So now let's first understand what is a region and what is availability zone. Okay, so when I'm saying that region, right? So region is a specific location all over the world where we want to launch our services. So we have 35 to 40 plus regions in AWS, right? So let's suppose if my office is in India, right? So if I have to create a server, or if I have to build a server, or if I have to migrate a server, right, then definitely I want that my server should be nearest to my office so that it will be reachable easily with less latency, right? I will get a better performance. So I will pick my Mumbai region, right? We have a Mumbai region. So if users are from Australia, right? If they want to launch their services, they want to migrate their services, what will be their nearest region? They will launch their services in the Sydney, right? In Australia, we have a three regions. One is in Sydney, one is in Melbourne, right? So they will see that their offices is near to Sydney or their offices is near to Melbourne, right? Similarly, if the users from Bangladesh or Nepal or from Bhutan, right? They want to launch their services or they want to migrate their services. So they will definitely pick Mumbai region because that will be their nearest region, right? And now let's suppose if I have launched my services, I have migrated all my services, and now I have to also cover the BCP from backup continuity plan or a disaster recovery plan, like uh, due to any natural calamity or any disaster reason, if this region goes down, right, then what will be my nearest region, right? Then my next nearest region will be Singapore, right? Rather than pick another region in Europe, or rather than picking another region as a ANZ Australia, the nearest region is Singapore, or I can use Hong Kong, right? I will replicate all my services to that nearest region, right? So this is the region. So region is basically a geographical location where you want to deploy or launch your services based on your office. And within that availability zone, sorry, within that region, if let's suppose I picked a Mumbai region, right? So this is my Mumbai region. So in that Mumbai region, I want to deploy a services, right? So to further segregate my services, they created availability zones, right? So what we say is that availability zones are just like your data center. So this will be my data center one, this will be my data center two. So here I will get a 10.10.1.0/24 subnet. Here I will use 10.10.2.0/24 subnet, right? This will also help me to provide a redundancy, as well as in case if one of my data center goes down, means one of my availability goes down, right? Then my services will be automatically accessible from this availability zone, right? To provide the redundancy within that availability, within that region, we create availability zones. So in every region, there are at least two availability zones, and some regions they have three or four availability zones, right? So if I'm talking about Mumbai, right? So why they created that availability zones? As I said, that this availability zone is just like a data center, right? So this is not that this data center and this data center are in that same office. So this data center will be in, let's suppose, X location in the Mumbai, and this data center will be in the Y location. There might be a difference of 10 kilometer, but why we are using, but let's suppose if there is any fire issues, if there is any ISP fire cut issues, right? Then your services will not be impacted. Your services can be accessible from other availability zone to provide the redundancies, right? They are launching multiple availability zones in that same region. I will show you in the practical that, right? So how we can see this. So as I said that in this is my region one and this is my region two. So in this region, I have a 4 availability zones, means 4 different available data centers. And in this region, they have a different availability zones. Okay, so now let's show you that. Is my screen visible, right? So this is AWS management console, right? Through which first of all, we have to create account on that. So once we create account, from these are the list of services, right? So if I want to launch compute services, so what type of compute services? I want to launch EC2 cloud computing. I want to launch Elastic Bean. Okay, sorry. So before explaining that, right? So on which region I have to launch this service, right? So let's suppose I clicked on EC2, right? I want to launch one server, that is Elastic Cloud Computing, right? So on which region, like if I'm in India, right? And I want to launch that service in India region, right? So from here, I will select that, right? So from there, I will select that, okay, in this Europe, these are the services. These are Asia Pacific regions. In Asia, we have a Hyderabad region. Similarly, in Mumbai East regions, right? In these are the Europe regions, right? Mumbai regions. In Canada, what regions I want to pick? So I am going with North Virginia, right? So I want to launch that service in North Virginia. Similarly, let me show you, right? So let's suppose I want to create one instance. Test EC2, right? I will show you the availability zone, right? So now I am launching this server or this machine in this North Virginia region, right? So they will ask me that what name you want to tag. I can add multiple tags. We will explain you the what applications and the operating systems you want to pick, right? So here we will go with the free tier. So this is a T2 macro, and what key pairs you want to use, that we will also explain that what are the public keys, what are the private keys, right? Similarly, in that network settings, this will be my VPCs that we will also explain you. So here I want to actually show that availability zones, right? So default subnets in any availability zone. So here I have not decided that this server should be launched in which availability zone, right? So if I want to decide that, I will click on edit in the network settings. So this will be my virtual private cloud network. We will explain. So these are the set of availability zones in North Virginia, right? So how many availability zones we have? So we have a 5 availability zones, right? So if I will go in this availability zone, then I will get IP addresses for from this range, right? Similarly, if I will select US East 1C, I will get this range. If I will E, right? So based on this, like here A, B, C, D, E, F. So we have a total 6 availability zones, right? So if, on which availability zone I want to launch my server, I will select it from here, right? So this is not like that that they will decide that what type of subnets I have to create, right? This is even a default VPC. If I want to create my own separate VPC and I want to decide that what IP addresses needs to be there for that VPCs, and in all that availability zones, what ranges needs to be configured, that we can manually configure, right? Similarly, whether you want to use public IP address on this, yes, if you will enable that public IP address, once you will launch that machine, you will get a public IP address, right? So this is basically the explanation of region and availability zones, right? So from here we can select that on which region we want to launch our services, but not all services are region specific. Like some of their services are globally accessible, right? They are like, if I will talk about identity access management, right, where we will create usernames or the passwords, or where we will assign the roles or policies, right? So whether you launched that service in North Virginia or in Mumbai or anywhere else, right? So all will be integrated with that global identity access management service. Like you see that here, if I want to create a user role policies, identity providers, I want to integrate with my domain controller, that will be not a region specific service. Here I am not, all are now dulled or shaded. I cannot select any of the region, right? So these all services we will cover. right? So that is what from my end in that demo session. So we have already explained that what things we will cover. So how that management console looks like, how we can launch that services, right? So now if you have any question, we will be happy to answer on that.